Welcome in, making the cut, week 10. Somehow, week 10. We've flown through this season at an unbelievable clip. It feels like we just started doing these. Um, Neil Smith, Lance Exley. Lance, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. Um, Started CJ Stroud in two of my leagues, so that makes for a pretty good week in my book. But we're doing.
Can't complain. Can't complain. All right. Well, that's good. That's always a feather in the cap. Um,
hmm
let's see here. Yeah, I'm 8-1 in one of my dynasty leagues, so I'm
Hmm.
feeling pretty good about that because that's one of those old school My Fantasy League classic leagues where I won it
Oh,
last
there you
year,
go.
and if you win it 2 years in a row, you hit the progressive and you end the league. I might actually have to pay taxes on that if I win that, given how they changed the laws. Where you have to report anything over $600, like I might
Oh
have to
yeah,
pay taxes on that one if I hit it.
all kinds of fun with that.
Uh, all right. Hopefully nobody watched that Monday Night Football so-called game yesterday. Game
That
made me
was
incredibly angry.
yeah.
Um, brutal. And
hmm
normally I don't want to just go right to firing a coach unless it's Arthur Smith, but please fire Robert Sala. It's just not working. Really inspires confidence when you stand there with your arms folded like that on the sidelines and don't actually like do anything or do your job. What do I know? Boy. Uh, yeah. So if you're still listening to this, it's week 10. That means your guillotine league is probably doing pretty well, or you just like hearing us talk. If that's the case, mazel tov. But that's where we're at here with this. We're getting close. Trade deadline is in like a week. That matters less for guillotine, matters more for regular leagues. So if you're listening to this and you plan and you're it's time to start checking. Make sure you know when your league's trade deadline is. Any last second trades you want to do, you've got like a week, maybe 2 weeks. Some leagues run it, some sites run it till the end of week 11, some a little before. So you've got between a week and 2 weeks realistically to kind of knock down any trades that you want to do. And beyond that, that's kind of all. It's kind of all that there is in terms of PSAs. Next week we'll have a PSA about the Thanksgiving adjusted schedule. We always do this for those who've been with the site for a long time. For Thanksgiving, we always do an adjusted schedule because you've got 3 games on a Thursday and you've got people traveling, and that's just a global thing. Everybody's traveling. So with that, let's just jump right into week 10. Hopefully, as like I said, hopefully it'll be a little bit better than week 9, although the bar for that is pretty low considering the level of schlock that we had to endure. Uh, Lance, did you happen to check who's on bye offhand for week 10?
It's Miami, Kansas
Double checking it
City,
now.
Los Angeles, and
The
it's
Rams,
not.
Los Angeles, by the way. That
Yeah,
that Los
Rams.
Angeles
Miami, Kansas City. I'm
Eagles.
totally blank. Eagle. I knew it was like three of the top.
Dolphins, Chiefs, Dolphins, Chiefs, Rams, Eagles. That's who it is in the background here. So,
Gotcha.
uh, yeah. So you got 4 teams on a bye again,
Whoever
and
one of your
we
weeks is
are,
pretty much on a bye.
yeah, because you'd have Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, Jalen
Tua,
Hurts,
Waddle, Mahomes
Raheem
occasionally.
Mostert, Tua, Waddle, Pacheco. I mean, you got to let Swift, AJ Brown. So the list goes on. You got a lot of big names on a bye this week. So this is the week where you're hoping you're actually playing one of the quote unquote good teams more than likely
Mm.
in your league because they're probably at half power right now. So you're gonna have some weird buys to kind of navigate around, but that's what we're here for. So with that, Lance, let's go into quarterbacks. I mean, as far as streaming quarterback options, um, it's kind of slim pickings with 4 teams on a bye and just kind of where we are in the year. You know what I mean? It's a lot of names we've already talked
hmm
about in the past. So I'd say one for me, take a look and see if Russell Wilson's available. Largely because he's going to get the Bills secondary, which has been terrible in a game that they are probably going to be losing. So he's going to have to throw. He's pretty much right at the cut line of 50%, so worth looking into there. I'd say next would be either Baker Mayfield or Will Levis. It's kind of like 2 and 3 flip flop right next to each other. It just depends on what you want to do with your life. Mayfield's been serviceable throughout the year. So on a 1 week rental, could be worse. He's actually kind of had QB2 aspirations throughout the kind of off and on throughout the season. And then Will Levis is kind of the big headline. He got named the starter. So it's Will Levis the rest of the way. They're going to thank Ryan Tannehill for his service, and his contract was up at the end of the year anyway. So at this point, you got to see what the kid has. You know what I mean? It's like the least surprising thing in the world. By the way, Baker Mayfield plays the Titans this week that I'm referencing. So that's why I'm saying normally the way I look at it is this: if I need a streamer for 1 week, I'd be more likely to pick up Mayfield. If I need a backup quarterback, probably be more likely to hold Will Levis and see what I can get. I know the 4 touchdowns is kind of an anomaly, but and then there's kind of like the next group of guys. It's Dobbs, it's Minshew, it's Heineke. Uh, kind of in that order, I guess. That order is kind of very fluid because it's all the same thing in my opinion. It's guys that could have a good week, but you like the floor is really low, but the ceiling is kind of intriguing. It's hard to kind of pin down in the background. And then the last one I have is Bryce Young. So you've got some decent options if you need a streamer to fill in for Mahomes or Hurts or Tua, which you probably do. So fortunately, you've got good streaming options for the back half. Lance, what do you think? What are you looking at for waivers for the week 10 and possibly beyond?
Yeah, I think what you said. Obviously Wilson, I think, just because of Denver's record and everything, I think a lot of people assume he's not playing as well, just like he did last year. But, he's actually done pretty well for himself this year if you look at the stats. Will Levis, I'm still a little shaky on. That Tennessee offense just does not really intrigue me all that much. And obviously, if you're looking at Will Levis, you're kind of, beggars can't be choosers. I get that. The one I would probably move up to that, upper tier category would be Dobbs, and simply for the reason of he's averaging about 50 rush yards this entire season. He's coming off his 3rd straight game with a rushing touchdown. And the guy came in without a practice snap and had a pretty good game. It started out ugly, but he rounded out to have a pretty good game, and he had it without most of their starters out there. I mean, Osborne went down with a concussion, I think it was. And so he was, they threw the game-winning touchdown to Brandon Powell. The last time Brandon Powell caught a touchdown, I think, was in 2021. So,
Yeah, played for the Rams, I believe.
Exactly. So it's like, and then you factor in Justin Jefferson might be coming back. Like the weapons he has around him in Minnesota are substantially better. And, he had, top 12 upside as a quarterback when he was with Arizona. I think his surrounding cast is a lot better. And he could be a 1 week rental that turns into something that's actually a pretty reliable backup. So
if there was anybody who would make the leap, it's him. The only issue with Dobbs is I know that's a nice story and it was a fun game to watch. And God, it made me smile after all the crap I've talked about the Falcons all year. How do you lose that game if you're the Falcons? You can't lose that game.
Especially
after lose that game, and
especially after how they made Will Levis look in his debut.
That's what I mean. You think you're going to remain employed losing games like that? Dude, you're going to get fired. You cannot remain employed and lose games like that to Will Levis in his first ever career start and Josh Dobbs, who had never taken a snap for that team.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be your Arthur Smith playoff defense, is what's supposed to be happening there. You can't remain employed. All of you have to be fired. And this is what I was saying at the start of the year, was that whole organization is on the hot seat. And I got so much crap from Atlanta fans on Twitter and just in the comments. Just in the comments of that video, you can read it. People calling me an idiot. I'm like, who's an idiot now? Because like that is not working out how you want it if you're a Falcons fan. That is bad. You were supposed to be competing for the division. It's not happening if you're going to lose to the Vikings and the Titans like that. You needed to win those games. So,
and especially in their division too, it's like,
excuse me,
there's no reason they shouldn't be, competing for that. You have Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Like, you have so much talent, and yet you're using none of it to your advantage. And that's not even talking about how poorly they played on defense against these two quarterbacks who they should be taking their lunch money. Like this, it's getting pretty ugly.
Will Levis shows up the next week and looks terrible.
Yeah.
He throws for 4 touchdowns against the Falcons, and then the next week he threw for 232 yards and a pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty telling. So it's pretty ugly. That's my only thing with Dobbs is I don't know if that's just the Falcons are bad. So it makes it hard for me to like really want to get too excited about Dobbs. I can understand the feels of it, and he's been okay with Arizona, but
and that's kind of what I put more.
He's not really like what I'm calling what I call a world beater here.
No, I don't think you're getting a world beater off the waiver wire at this point in the season, unless Bryce Young somehow.
This isn't Colin Kaepernick comes in for the 49ers in 2012.
No.
Yeah, this isn't that. This
no.
isn't like league winner, like, oh, he can run, league winner. Like, no, I remember that year. That's not how this is going to work. Like, that's a little bit different. So, okay, that makes sense. And then we kind of know, like, Minshew is Minshew. There's going to be ups and downs with it.
Got to ride it out if you're going.
If he was just a little bit better, he'd have a starting job.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. If he was gonna, that's just the way it is with him. If he was a little bit better, he'd have that starting job. That's the problem. Is why he doesn't have a starting job. Is that he's just not consistent enough. The highs are really high, but the lows are pretty low. And then you've got Heineke, who's they're gonna stick with for at least a little while. He looks exactly the same as he did in Washington. The one that is somewhat intriguing for a 1-week rental is Bryce Young, because he's playing the Bears. But even then, you'd have to go pretty far down the list to get to there.
I'd almost rather have Tyson Bagent than Bryce Young at this point.
I don't know if I'm ready to go with Bagent, and that conversation's not really super relevant because Bagent's not really that's gonna be over soon.
No,
whether it's probably not going to be Thursday, but I'd say by the week after that problem will situation will rectify itself. As far as strictly guillotine goes, I have a question for you. What do you do with Justin Herbert?
I think it's time you start looking for other options.
You can't start him. If you're still alive, you can't possibly be starting him anymore.
No.
Who do they play this week? They play Detroit. Okay. It's a little more friendly. Still not ideal.
Right. No, I definitely think at this point you kind of have to look for another options. I don't think I'm cutting him. But at the same time, like, I can probably come up with at minimum 12 different quarterbacks I would start over him, just because I'm not getting any of the consistency and any, they started out looking pretty good, and since their bye week, it's just kind of, it's been rocky. Had a good week against the Bears, but who hasn't?
That's the Bears. That's everybody.
So
I don't know if I could get 12 quarterbacks that I would rather start in front of Justin Herbert, but I could definitely get a couple. He opens this week in the ECR as QB3, by the way. It's Tuesday, so there is that. But at the same time, That's really high for my liking, and I get it. The matchup against Detroit is a positive one. That's good, but they have been brutal, and they
Yeah,
cannot get any offense out of anyone not named Austin Eckler or Keenan Allen.
no.
They get nothing. Palmer is now like seriously hurt. They broke that too. They just break all their toys.
Yeah.
And they Mike Williams is done for the year, obviously. Now his replacement Palmer, who's played well in relief duty for the last 2 seasons, is now hurt.
Be
So
nice
you've
if we
got
could get
nothing. Like
something
you're
out.
down to
The first round pick they took with their wide receiver, but that just doesn't, for whatever reason, that's not clicking. Even JSN in Seattle is getting going, but for whatever reason, Quentin Johnston's just not going to be a thing this year. So,
Jordan Addison is on another planet.
oh
Like,
yeah,
compared to some of that, you know what I mean? Like it's Addison was playing with a guy he'd never played with before and got double-digit fantasy points in PPR last week without scoring a touchdown. That's the
Yeah.
level of difference. You can make the argument. You can make the argument about, oh, his finger is hurt. Okay, everybody in the NFL is hurt. It's week 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of whether you're hurt or whether you're injured. I know it's got to be hard playing with that splint on his hand, but that can't be the excuse. And I know the O-line is playing poorly, but again, plenty of people's teams are playing poorly, and at least they managed to cobble together some kind of offense.
I mean, you look what CJ Stroud has done, and, considering the roster he has around him and how the offensive line's been hurt and everything else, if you were to surround, Justin Herbert with that, everyone would be making excuses. And, you could easily make excuses for CJ Stroud. He's a rookie. His offensive line hasn't been great. He doesn't have the talent around him, but yet he put up historical numbers Sunday. So you're kind of running out of excuses here with Herbert, and it's getting to the point where
I don't think it's
you
Herbert.
need.
I think it's Herbert.
Well,
I think it's coaching.
insofar as you starting Herbert in fantasy, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah. You're talking about just starting him in fantasy with the original point of this conversation. Yes. And I agree with the general supposition there, by the way. You and I see this the same way.
Yeah.
You got to start finding a backup plan. Backup plans need to be secured, and it's guillotine, so there are certain things that will be available. For example, if Jared Goff somehow fell apart, literally, and it was just on the waiver wire at some point, if I would check, that'd be right near the top. And I don't even like Jared Goff, but he's playing the Chargers, and that's gonna be a shootout. Stroud is still widely available. That will change immediately. The last run of waiver claims, especially in guillotine, will happen tomorrow. That will change. He will be gone. So that would be my number one choice. Would be Stroud, and then I would be looking at Goff if he was somehow available. Might consider Trevor Lawrence. He's been playing a little bit better. But I wouldn't feel obligated to do that. If I needed a streamer, because it's guillotine, you'll have different options. If Sam Howell is out there as a streamer, be interested in that. Kyler Murray coming back. Yep. It's time. It's time to grab that. He's playing the crappy Atlanta defense, by the way. What a way to come back to the NFL.
We know how that goes.
Russell Wilson, who we already discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Derek Carr against Minnesota. So I know it's a little harder in guillotine to stream, but given the level of options, you might be able to, and just kind of like car wash it through for a little while until you figure out what you want to do with Herbert. And there's some decent options. And that's with 4 players on a bye. 3 every week starters, by the way, are on a bye at quarterback, and there's still good options. So that's where I'm at. It's like you got to start taking a look around and seeing what's available and having some kind of backup plan, because I'm not saying he's not going to throw a touchdown every week, but Herbert hasn't done anything in a while, and it's getting bad. And in regular fantasy, you might be able to wallpaper over it. You know what I mean? In Dynasty, that's going to be hard too. But in like redraft, you might be able to like navigate around it. In guillotine, you don't have that luxury. No. You can't take a 7 from your quarterback. If you survive that once, you won't survive it again. Like, it's just the way that it goes, especially as the pool gets thinner and thinner and thinner as we get closer to the end. The teams get better and better and better. So you've got to start like making plans if Herbert's going to fall apart. So it's unfortunate, but that was my big takeaway. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about related to quarterback for Guillotine? Is there anything that's concerning you?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I mean, obviously there's quarterbacks that you're trying to stay away from just because of the up and down nature of it, like Herbert. If Tua or Lamar are out there, I'd definitely be willing to throw a little bit on them just to kind of upgrade the position. If Geno's out there, I'd leave him. If Jordan Love's out there, I'd leave him. Will Levis, I'd leave him. And yeah, aside from that, you start getting into streamers and everything like that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And just for the sake of addressing it, I do not think that you should, if you're good and you just need a backup, I don't think Carson Wentz is the answer for you. I don't think it's the answer for the Rams, and I don't think it should be the answer for you either.
Oh, not the answer for anything.
Shouldn't be, but
his foot hasn't been healthy for most of his career, and they keep throwing him out there. Lance, talk to me about running back. Who do you like as kind of running back pickups for this week?
Well, obviously, I mean, how could we have not seen the Mitchell breakout coming out of the Ravens? I mean, that was writing was on the wall for that one. Everyone saw that coming. Obviously, no, that was that is, just as frustrating as it is with the Ravens backfield. I know I've been pounding the table for them, but I think maybe there's some value in him. And outside of that, Zach Charbonnet, I think, you see an uptick in snaps. And again, Seattle game script wise was behind, trying to throw the ball, trying to get back in the game. And you see again his snaps take an uptick. He actually outsnapped Kenneth Walker for the second week in a row that both of them were playing. So that interests me. For what feels like the millionth time this year, Tajay Spears, again, get him rostered. Tired of talking about it. He outsnapped
We're
Derrick
contractually
Henry.
obligated to discuss this.
We are, and broken record here, but please just get him on your team. Please. So with Chicago now, you have potentially, it looks like Khalil Herbert might be coming back on Thursday. If you're going to play him, that's another conversation. But if you have Foreman on your roster, do you still feel comfortable playing him? Or is that something where you might be looking at other options?
No, not well for me. No.
Mm-hmm.
If there's three of them, then there might as well be none of them.
Right.
Because this is going to be the headache that we deal with. There's a reason that Foreman was a healthy scratch for them for several weeks at the beginning of the year, because they don't even know how to balance the three of them. They don't know how to deal with it. So the problem is going to be, I don't think they're going to do that again, because they're probably not going to give Herbert the full job. Herbert's coming off that injury. He's going to get some run, but I feel like what happens is that you're going to have Herbert and Foreman are going to split the traditional running back duties. So your first and second down type alternating drives. And then you'll have Roschon, who's the third down back, because he's the best pass protector of the three. This will probably continue for at least 2 weeks. I won't start any of them if that's the way that's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where, if you're in dire straits, I guess, but if you have the luxury of having
If
the
I'm in dire
option,
straits, I'd probably just play Herbert then.
yeah.
If you have the luxury of having the option, then you just won't play any of them.
Right.
But yeah, no, okay. A lot of this, I have some of the same names here. I'm avoiding Keaton Mitchell. He had 9 carries. Let's all just calm the titties. Your titties are all out of whack here because you saw some guy look like CJ Spiller, Chris Johnson, got the titties all moving. They're all inflamed. You gotta calm those down. It's way too much hype on a guy who I saw have 9 carries in a game that got way out of control.
No, it did.
Like in a game that they were winning by a billion from the minute it started. So like if they're gonna play this, I'll tell you what, if they're gonna play Seattle every week, great, pick them up. You had 9 carries. Like they're saying they're trying to get him more involved. Cool, fine. If I have an open roster spot and I'm willing to like put him on the end of it, cool. I don't care. Go nuts. If you want to hold him as a prospect, whoop-de-doo for you. It's like $1 in fab. Like somebody though is the problem is going to spend half their fab budget on this. And I'm not. You know it's going to happen, Lance. You know that's going to happen. The people are going to get all. It's the waiver wire for running back. This late in the year, the waiver wire for running back is dry as a bone. It's garbage. There is so much garbage
Swift,
on this waiver wire.
Mostert, Pacheco, all on a bye. So yeah, yep. someone's.
You got a lot of buys. Someone is doing this, and I'm telling you, I'm not blowing half my fab budget. Whether that's in redraft or guillotine, dynasty, you'd have to be really desperate. And I think I'd just hold your money. Like, I'm not doing that. But if I can get him at a reasonable price, because other people aren't buying it, I might put the claim in and see what I can get and put it in at like $5. I'm like, all right, if I get him, I get him. Stick him on the end of my bench and see what I get. But I'm telling you, the odds on this are not great because he had 9 carries. And they were like, he's going to see an expanded role. 9 carries is not really a role. All that does is murder your man Justice Hill. It just murders him dead. Now there's no point in that either. Because you're not supplanting the Gus Bus at this point. Coming off 3 multiple touchdown games, I know that's not sustainable, but you ain't supplanting it.
No.
That's just how that works now. That's just how that's going to be for the season. So until Gus Edwards gets hurt, that's his job. Sorry, but it is. And I know it's not sexy watching Gus Edwards play, but he's actually playing pretty well. Can't really complain about how he's playing at the moment. He looks fast, faster than normal. He looks strong, which he always has. And he's always had that nose for the goal line. It's just, can he stay healthy? That's always been the issue with Gus Edwards, is can he actually stay healthy when you give him a proper workload? So far, he has. So until he gets hurt, this is basically like, I'm going to put a handcuff out for Keaton Mitchell. Weirdly, I have him as like a top 3 running back claim because the running back waiver wire is trash. That doesn't mean I love Keaton Mitchell. It just means that the only people I would be more interested in bidding on are Zach Charbonnet and Spears. Because we are contractually obligated to talk about Charbonnet and Spears every week because it's that time of year. You need to have Spears if for no other reason than you roster Derrick Henry. And you're going to the playoffs. And also, it's the same thing with Charbonnet. My weird tea leaves prediction from several like week 5 has been slowly coming true, where Charbonnet is slowly starting to get himself. It hasn't broken yet, but it doesn't matter because he's good enough to me that he's already long proven that no, he's the handcuff that you need. Because if something was to happen to Walker, it's going to be Charbonnet because they damn sure ain't going back to DJ Dallas. That ship has sailed. So, yeah, for me, it's Charbonnet, Spears, Mitchell. Weirdly, then it's Antonio Gibson. And I feel gross about it. Really gross about that. But it's just what it is. He's catching passes again. The Commanders can't help themselves. The Commanders are going to commander. They will not commit to running the ball. with Brian Robinson because Ron Rivera is not competent. And I will defend that in court. I will have a montage of Ron Rivera doing sideline interviews and post-game pressers, and it's all I need, like to defend that opinion. Ron Rivera doesn't know what he's doing, and it's like they're not going to commit to Robinson, even in games they should commit to Robinson. And so what's going to happen? What's going to happen is this weird world that we live in where this seems to happen as we go down the stretch every year. Gibson gets more involved. Robinson did get a little nicked up, but they like to throw dump offs to Gibson. It's happening again. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because this has happened every year for the last 3 years. It doesn't change. And now down the stretch, it's like, no, pick up Gibson because he had 12 fantasy points last week. He's getting like 6 targets a game. I hate it, but it's what it is. Like it's if you're averaging 6 targets a game, you get rostered in fantasy if you're a running back. It's just how fantasy football works. It's the argument that I had with Jason Draven for 3 years. If you're averaging 8 targets a game, you're not a flex. You're a wide receiver too. like so that's an old argument, Lance. That's the correct face, by the way. That's the correct face to make for that conversation where I used to have that argument with him for like 3 years about. He kept saying like, no, he's going to have 8 targets. He's a flex. And I'm like, no, honey, no. If you're averaging 8 targets, you're not a flex. If you're averaging 5 targets, you're a flex.
Right.
Like if you're averaging 8 targets, you're a freaking wide receiver too. You're like a 6th round draft pick. Like it's like that's like, honey, no, that's not how that math works at all. Like, and if you're a running back that averages 8 targets a game, you're Austin freaking Eckler. And that's it. There's no one else. There's no other running back that does that. Because you have to average it. So you might get to 8 once, but it's average. Like it's only Eckler anyway. I digress. And then past that, it's a bunch of crap I don't want. Like I look at Justice Hill, can't deal with it. Not interested. Look at Jaleel McLaughlin. I feel like I'm Fox Mulder in the X-Files. I want to believe. Oh, that's the poster I need. I want to believe in Jaleel McLaughlin with my incredibly dated 30-year-old reference that I apologize for. They rebooted it 20 years. 20-year-old reference that I apologize for. And then it's like Elijah Mitchell should be rostered in more leagues, but I kind of get why he hasn't been because they won't even commit to the backup anymore. It's just a lot of crap. There's just so much crap. Like Jeff Wilson has kind of devolved into crap with Achane coming back, especially. Kendre Miller is crap. Amari DeMercado has kind of devolved into crap. Because James Conner's probably coming back. So now that's a mess. Probably coming back this week, by the way. Ty Chandler, Tank Bigsby, Kenny Gainwell on the bye. I know he scored. I don't care. Royce Freeman, Rico Dowdle, Roshan. It's just crap. So that's why I'm saying, like, Zach Charbonnet. Oh, and I didn't even mention it. Leonard Fournette. Crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's three, there's none, Lance. If you're telling me that it's Cook, Murray, and Fournette, I want no part of it. That's just no.
And that's before you even factor Josh Allen running it on the goal line too. So.
Right. That's just trash. And then Damian Harris, I don't think he's even done for the year. He'd probably be back at some point. Do not likey. Neil no likey anything about any of that. That's really bad. So that's why I'm telling you, like, there's 4 running backs that I'm interested in. And 2 of them shouldn't even be available. Like it's Charbonnet, it's Spears, it's Mitchell because of attrition, and then it's Antonio Gibson. That's how this is why I told you, this is why some jackhole that you know in one of your leagues is going to blow half their fab budget on Mitchell. You know it. You search your feelings. You know this to be true. Like, that's going to happen. I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'm just not going to be that guy.
No.
From 9 carries. I know he had 138 yards and scored. Homie, I watched. There's only 2 people I've ever seen that had meaningful production that were able to do that for any amount of time. Can you guess who they are? Because I already referenced them. Who are they?
Chris Johnson.
Yeah, Chris Johnson is one. That's the obvious comparison.
CJ Spiller.
Yeah, CJ Spiller.
Yeah.
For about 2 years. That's it. Nobody else has ever been able to sustain that level of production on what you would be 10 touches a game.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work typically. So
And
let's
he
talk
is
about.
not as fast as Chris Johnson.
No one is as fast as
Leave
Chris
it.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Chris Johnson, that was literally like that was unfair, especially given that era of the NFL where nobody was that fast. It was just remember when that was when you used to have fat linebackers. That was when you had big dudes playing linebacker. That wasn't fair.
Oh yeah.
He would just run past them and laugh as he did so, and it was really funny. All right, let's talk about running back for Guillotine here. The big names are all still unavailable. If Alvin Kamara was on the team that somehow got clipped, I know he had a down week. My God, I will blow some money at this point in the year on Alvin Kamara. This is where I will start, Lance. You'll notice I'll start loosening the purse strings because for things like this, because you've only got like a handful more weeks because they cut the waiver wire in Guillotine in like 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So you only have a handful more opportunities. If I can get Alvin Kamara, I will spend some money on this if I need to get Alvin Kamara. That's the name that I saw that I had circled coming into this. And then a couple other ones. Brees Hall, I would spend up for. I hate Robert Saleh. Freaking jackhole. Like, Jesus. That game, like, I'm still mad about that game, like 24 hours later. It just shoot me. Like
Yeah.
that game was awful.
No, it doesn't help they're in prime time so much, just like Denver was last year. It's ugh.
But I believe better days are ahead for Brees Hall.
You'd
So
hope.
I'm interested in those two names off the rip. And then there's a lot of names that probably are just too good to have gotten clipped off. If for some reason stupid people left Aaron Jones on roster, go check on that. Never know. It's worth looking.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, David Montgomery's coming back. I have to imagine he's still rostered. It's worth looking. Really, it gets rough with 4 teams on a bye, especially. Those are the 2 that underperformed that might be immediately available that got clipped. And then past that, there's weird things like Chuba Hubbard might still be available. It's worth looking into. I will continue to talk about Jaylen Warren until they take the mic out of my cold dead hands. That needs to be looked into if you can look for that. Gus Edwards is still weirdly available. I don't know why. Feels like that's problem should have solved itself 2 weeks ago. At least 1 week ago. Still available. Go look at that. Kareem Hunt. I hate it. I hate everything about it. Especially hate it this week. But if I can get it for very cheap, take a look at that. That's kind of what I had prepped for this. That's who I would be trying to target in a guillotine to see who was available. What do you think, Lance? And then give me an idea of like what you would spend for at least the top end guys.
Well, there's 2 top end guys that I'm kind of torn between right now, and I don't necessarily love either one of them. And they're 2 guys, 2 of the 3 guys that we referenced earlier that were getting a great workload, and that's Bijan Robinson and Tony Pollard. Both of them had kind of shitty weeks.
My joke's not as funny as it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Not as funny now.
Between the 2 of them, I would definitely go with Pollard because Arthur Smith is just full on galaxy brain down in Atlanta, and I want no part of that frustration. But
galaxy brain at the unemployment office here in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be right. And then I'm going to be right. And then I'm going to go do a Twitter like tirade. It's going to be awesome.
Pacheco might be another one that got clipped. And yeah, from there gets kind of rough, like you said. I feel like it's okay to move on from Zach Moss at this point. Like, I think, John Taylor's definitely taking the reins back, and the Rams backfield, they're obviously on a bye, but if you see one of them out there on the wire, I would be okay leaving them. and letting someone else deal with that headache.
Yeah, the Rams thing is gonna like take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've already said Kyron Williams is coming back as soon as he's available.
Right.
Which is not this week. He has to miss next week because they don't count the bye week as part of the whole IR thing. He has to miss 4 games. So he'll be back in like week 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'll be back in week 12. So you only really have one more week where the Rams thing even matters.
Yeah.
To the extent that it ever mattered, by the way.
Right.
Because look at how that went last week.
Oh yeah.
Craptacular.
Being the waiver wire so thin, I would probably, I would at least go 50, maybe more for Tony Pollard.
Oh, I'd pay a little more than that, I think, if you could
Yeah.
get Pollard. I'd probably go to, if I had the money, I'd be willing to go to 100.
Mm-hmm. I feel highest I'd probably go would be 80. And there's just something about, he hasn't been bad this year, but for the volume he's got, I feel he should just be producing a little bit more. And especially with like the game script that the Cowboys have been in for some of these games, it's like he should just be killing these defenses. I mean, we're not getting what you saw last year in some games, like the Minnesota game, for example, that kind of made you think, oh, wow, he's going to be, could be the RB1 this year.
That's why I was saying I'd rather Kamara or Hall.
Yeah, Kamara Hall, I would definitely go 100.
I'd rather deal with Kamara or Hall, but if you're telling me that you're talking about the difference between like, okay, Tony Pollard and Bijan were available, I agree with the general supposition of I would prefer Pollard over Bijan at this point, which is funny because it's not actually anything I have against Bijan. It's literally the same thing you mentioned. It's Arthur Smith. It's the Falcons.
Galaxy brain. Yeah.
But I would put up 100 on Pollard because you're only going to get so many bites at this apple. You only have a couple more weeks. So you'd almost have to look at your league and be like, okay, who do I think is most likely to get chopped? And then see what the other running backs they have are. And kind of like work it backwards. Where it's like, okay, if that was the case, I know 3 more teams are getting eliminated. What are the most likely 3? What running backs do they have? Should I spend 100 on Pollard or should I just not worry about it and just try to, if I don't need it, let me go get through another week, let the running backs get dumped in the pool, and then figure it out from there and keep my money in my pocket for as long as possible, because that's always the goal. You'd rather have your money in your pocket until the bitter end, basically, because then you're bidding against yourself, because most people exhaust their budgets super early.
Yeah. No, I definitely, 100, I would say Pollard, Hall, Kamara, Robinson.
No, I wouldn't pay 100 for Robinson.
I'd go 35, and I probably wouldn't feel great about that.
Yeah, if I was desperate at running back, like I'm like, oh my God, it's the sky is falling, I might put 50 down, depending on how much money I actually had, because then I felt like if I didn't win it for 50, I don't want it.
Right.
That's somebody else's problem at that point. And I'll waiver claim him for 50 again next week after you get eliminated.
Yeah. Pacheco, I'd probably go 70-ish on. Ken Walker, around the same. And then from there, it's just kind of...
It's just whatever.
Gets a little murky.
Yeah, it's just kind of whatever you want to throw at it. I wouldn't pay any more than 50 for Aaron Jones, period, end of story. I know he had a nice week, but still a little nervous.
Green Bay offense.
Yeah, just generally. So yeah, no, I'd say that's probably about right. And then yeah, like for something like a Chuba Hubbard, where you're talking about like a back end RB2, 35, 30, 35, something like that. That's probably where you're at. Something like that. A Renta RB. A guy I feel like can get me 10 points pretty consistently, but anything past that's going to involve touchdowns. And maybe he gets them on Thursday night. I don't know. Maybe he does. Nobody knows. I'm going to be annoyed because I'm going to have to start Bryce Young in a league, but that's a dynasty league, and we don't worry about that right now. We'll deal with that problem. We'll deal with that problem the next day or two. I have Hurts on the bye, and Daniel Jones is going on IR. So I'm like, well, guess we're playing the kid because that's all I got. Like, I'm grateful to have him right now because the waiver wire, that dynasty league, is non-existent. It's a 12-team deep bench dynasty league, man. It's like 24 rosters. You roster like 24 in that league, like, and it's 12 teams. There ain't nobody on the waiver wire. Like there's nothing on that waiver wire you want. I think Taylor Heineke was out there and somebody immediately snatched it. The second he got named the starter, was like, yoink! Like, I'm gonna need that later. Absolutely how that typically goes. All right, let's do wide receiver, and this is actually like really quick for my end.
Mm-hmm.
Tank Dell is still just barely above 50%, by the way, folks listening to this. That's stupid. So go fix that. That problem. I bet you, Lance, that problem takes care of itself by tomorrow. So, but he is sitting right at around the cut line still, which is odd. He got dropped in a lot of leagues and formats because of his extended kind of injury there. But he's far and away number one. He's number one, and then there's like this huge gap between him and number two. Number two is Demario Douglas, which isn't my favorite thing. He certainly is no Kendrick Bourne. That's a shame too. Boy, you feel bad for somebody. You feel bad for Kendrick Bourne. At least I do. That man does not deserve the career that he has had. He's had some bad luck, Kendrick Bourne. He has been on the fringes of being a real breakout NFL player like twice. And both times it gets derailed by injury and he has to start all the way over from scratch. Really sucks. So that's a shame. But yeah, you've got Demario Douglas would be 2. And then honest to God, after that, like it just devolves. It devolves into garbage so quickly that it is just utter trash at that point. There is just nothing that's actually realistically available that you would want. I mean, it immediately starts going off a cliff to things like Noah Brown. I don't want Noah Brown. That was the biggest fluke I've ever seen in my entire life. Josh Reynolds. Well, that's been ruined because now it's Jameson Williams, Josh Reynolds, Donovan Peoples-Jones has now shown up. There's nothing that I want in that. Khalil Shakir. I don't want Khalil Shakir. That was also a fluke. Zay Jones hasn't played all year. Quentin Johnson has been brutal. He was cut by whoever drafted him in your league for a reason. You see my point? There is just nothing that you want on the waiver wire here. I would be more interested in looking at things like Jaden Reed, Michael Wilson. Rashid Shaheed's gone over 50%, Lance. I'm sorry. I can't talk about it anymore. I know you like when I talk about Rashid Shaheed every week, but I can't do it anymore. It's I had to get it in. But there's just nothing. Like there's just nothing. I know some people are excited about Cedric Tillman after the DPJ thing got announced. I don't care. He's going to have to do something for me to care about this. People talking about Michael Gallup. I don't care. It's not consistent enough to matter. Kyle Phillips, same thing. I know Treylon Burks is hurt again. I don't care. Like, none of this matters. It's just, frankly, it's just crap. It is a wall of crap. Because Michael Wilson and Jaden Reed, the other guys I mentioned, that's also crap. It's all crap. Wide receiver waiver wire is brutal right now. And with 4 teams on a bye, it ain't helping. So this is where I'm like, we were talking about running back, where I'm like, it's 3 guys. 2 of them should have already be rostered. We shouldn't be talking about it. This is literally what that should look like. It's 2 guys. And the rest of it is just coin flips and dart throws, and it's personal preference, and it's whatever you want to deal with it. Basically, I'll put it to you this way. I would put down a lot of money on Tank Dell if I could, and I needed a wide receiver. A lot. Because it's Tank Dell, and then I would put down $10 on Demario Davis-ish in like a normal redraft kind of league. You know what I mean? Everybody else is $1.
Yeah.
It's $1. Everybody else is $1 after that. It's just $1 grab bag, and whatever I get, I get. It's just brutal. Like, there's just no other way to, I have no other way to, like, do you have anything? Because I'm really struggling for, like, I know we're like week 10, you know what I mean? It's like, so this happens. This is relatively normal. It's not that abnormal. Do you have any optimism about anything? Any names you want to add? You want to correct me on anything that I've said if you think I'm crazy, but I mean,
someone earlier in the year might have got tired of holding JSN, and I see he's over 50% in both Yahoo and ESPN leagues, but
and Sleeper, I
if
can do that. I can
there's
do that cold. He's also
yeah,
over in Sleeper. I don't have to look.
you
I can
know,
just tell
if
you.
there's a chance that you can get him, he's the best of a bad bunch right now. Jamar Chase, he's day to day with a back injury, so again, ESPN, he's just shy of 50%. Yahoo, he's over 50%. But Tyler Boyd, especially now that the Bengals look like
I thought you were
they're.
saying. I'm sorry. You like totally threw me off. I thought you were saying Jamar Chase was.
No,
Over
I'm not
50%.
saying Jamar Chase. Yeah.
Tweeting. I'm like, what is that? Like, that's not real. Like,
No, everyone dropped Jamar Chase this year. You didn't notice.
Yeah, 100%. They all dropped him, and
They got tired of it.
Yeah, I know. I understand the Tyler Boyd thing. Every time
Mm-hmm.
either one of the other two misses, Tyler Boyd usually sees an uptick. No, that makes sense.
Your boy Wan'Dale Robinson had a touchdown.
I felt so much better. I felt so much better about this before Daniel Jones went on IR.
Yeah, we have Tommy DeVito now, so I mean,
I know, and that's why you didn't even hear me
ugly.
mention it. I didn't even mention it for a reason, though. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I felt good about this when Daniel Jones was coming back, and I was going to talk about it, and he got hurt for the year and went on IR, and I'm like, just scratch that right off the list. Like, it was two of
But
my regulars,
at the
Rashid
same
Shaheed and
time, it
Wan'Dale.
was Tommy DeVito who found him. So I mean,
I know.
You know, game
But do you
script
really
wise, they're going to be
believe?
throwing. I
Do you
don't
really
believe
believe in any
no,
of
but
this? Like,
we just
would
got
you
done
rather have
saying,
Would you rather have Jaden Reed or Wan'Dale Robinson?
Wan'Dale.
That's probably right, largely because Jaden Reed is attractive.
Dobbs,
But
Watson, Musgrave, all are getting targets ahead of
no,
Reed.
yes and no. But Reed's also getting like a fair amount of targets, even though it is slightly less, and he's getting carries, which is the other weird thing that they've started doing with him. But I'm just trying to like kind of gauge like where you place it. But this is why I'm saying it's all dollar grab bag anyway. So
he's moving up. And the last one I'll put in there, and I am fully prepared for you to cringe at this, and that is more than okay. And that's Darnell Mooney. He had a really bad beginning of the year. The Bears offense as a whole has been nothing close to what we expected. Him in particular, he's definitely struggled as of the past couple weeks. So, he's garnered at least 4 targets in every single game. Granted, he only caught one of them 2 weeks ago against Los Angeles, but the one catch he had, 41 yards. So consider him a diet Rashid Shaheed. And, if he needs something
very diet.
Yeah. If you need something to get excited about on the waiver wire, talk yourself into Darnell Mooney, because I mean, there's not much else out there.
God. Ew.
Yep.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do that. I couldn't bring myself to recommend it. I watched too many of those games. I see how it actually proceeds.
And
there's just no way I could do it. Especially with Fields coming back. Fields coming back is actually bad, I think, in this instance for Mooney, because that's who he was so brutal playing with at the beginning of the year. Like, he's gotten better when Bagent was under center. Everything has gotten better when Bagent is under center. I go back to it has nothing to do with Bagent. This is what people are not understanding. It has nothing I shouldn't say nothing. It's very little to do with Bagent. Bagent has been a nice little story, and he hasn't been crashing the car.
Mm-hmm.
They dumbed the offense down when they knew they were going to Bagent, because you were dealing with a guy who had no reps. And what's really irritating is the dumbed down version of the offense, just running the base offense, is more effective. Look at my face and know that I hate my life. That's what it is. When they're trying to run their full offense, there's all these crazy motions and screens, all this crap that is just so busy. It's just busy. And it's like, dog, stop doing
too
that.
much.
Stop doing that. And just run the ball up the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Put the ball on D'Onta Foreman's chest and just let him run up the middle. Oh, look, you gained 3.5 yards. Okay, do it again. Okay, now it's 3rd and like 2.5 to 3. Okay, here's the offense with Fields is in there. Complicated series of motions where a bunch of people move around and then they snap it, and then it's play action, and and the pocket immediately collapses, and he runs for his life, and then he's standing there holding the ball, patting the ball on the sideline, and then either gets blasted or throws it away. Okay, that's down 1. Down 2. In the shotgun, snap it to him, step up in the pocket, can't make a read because you're so terrified that someone's going to kill you from the blind side. Throw it away or get nailed from the blind side, or run for your life out the other side. That's down 2. Down 3. It's either a screen, a dump off to Cole Kmet, or a 40-yard bomb that is nowhere near anyone that it was meant to be near. That's the offense, because they're not doing what they need to do to just do the basics. Get the ball moving forward. Stop freaking motioning people. Just stop it. Stop trying to call 2 plays to Justin Fields in his helmet and then do like the choice. That's what good teams do. That's what Jalen Hurts does. Like, he can do that because Jalen Hurts is further along in his development and, by the way, has an offensive line and command of a system that knows what he's doing and has more than one actual like skill position player that you want to have on your team. Okay, the Bears have more than one. That's a little hyperbolic there. I understand. It's not just DJ Moore. They have other okay-ish ancillary pieces. Cole Kmet's been okay-ish. Khalil Herbert is okay-ish. They'd play on other teams, is my point. They would exist. It's not like the Bears teams of old where it's like, no, if they didn't play on the Bears, they wouldn't be in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I'm used to. But that's my point. I've watched all those games. That's literally the difference from the beginning of the year to now is, no, with Bagent, they simplify everything. They run the base offense. They just put the ball in freaking D'Onta Foreman's chest and just let him go forward for 3 yards. And I'm like, how hard is this? You know your O-line can't pass protect worth a damn. So why are you asking them to? Oh, because you're Matt Eberflus and you have to be the smartest person in the room. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm an egomaniac named Matt Eberflus who has to justify my existence to Skeletor, aka the corpse of Virginia McCaskey, and her allegedly inbred son. Allegedly. That's the point. I have to put the allegedly in there. Allegedly. It's not alleged. Allegedly. Allegedly. Your Honor. Your Honor. My client would never question the mental validity of senior citizens and rich. Your Honor, this is a good man. Would never publicly ridicule and call someone an inbred moron to their face. Anyway, we need to move on before I get myself in any more trouble than I may have already done. The damage has already been done. That's years of Bears catharsis, Lance, is what that is. This is why I'm saying, like, what chance does Darnell Mooney have? That's my point. It's like, when he started sucking, I'm like, yeah, that's not even his fault. It's not like Darnell Mooney suddenly forgot how to play football. He had a bad year when they asked him to be the wide receiver 1. And I'm like, all right, well, that makes sense. It's not really meant for that role.
No.
So they put him back at wide receiver 2, and then they just forgot he existed. And it's like, okay, that's fun.
Yeah. And they brought in Chase Claypool, and we saw how that worked out.
Yeah, and then you wasted all that draft capital again because the people that run that team are not intelligent. Like, they don't know how to evaluate talent. They don't know how to lock up lawn trimming equipment. Google it. They don't. That's more for the audience. I assume you know that joke. They don't know like how to do a lot of stuff. That, like, basic competency. I'm not talking about like you got to be a genius here. I'm talking about like baseline competence. Like, even the bad NFL teams figured some of this stuff out, and the Bears don't because they're the Bears. And I'm sorry, but the only way you're ever going to get that team to work properly is if, like, they sell it. And we bring in new ownership, and that new ownership has got deep pockets. and they're willing to hire proper football people and then step out of it and let the proper football people run it.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you have this family that owns it, that insists on being involved, this is also my theory as to why the Chargers don't work. Because you have Dean Spanos running it as like his main job. Okay, Dean Spanos doesn't know what he's doing. There's a lot of evidence that I could point to about this. Like he doesn't don't tell Jason or Mike Berland. But Dean Spanos doesn't know what he's doing. Just between me and you, he has no idea how to do his job. My favorite Dean Spanos story was when he was trying to move the team to LA and it came down to him and Kroenke because they could only get one stadium. And they both put together their proposals. And Kroenke's like a real businessman who runs multiple sports teams and has money from like other business ventures that he runs besides that. He's like a real, like actual professional. And Dean Spanos is an idiot. So Dean Spanos didn't know how to put the bids together. This is a Wall Street Journal article that I could link you that is at one of my favorite. I want to like print it off and hang it on my wall. It's like my favorite thing. Spanos hired this guy who's a consultant from Disney to like help them put together the plan for why they should be awarded like the main, because you know how there's like the owner of the stadium at SoFi and then there's the Chargers are a tenant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know much about how that actually like worked.
Somewhat, but yeah,
that's the high level. Is that
mm-hmm.
Kroenke owns it,
mm-hmm.
and the Chargers are a tenant at SoFi. Well, they had they had like fair shot at bidding on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Chargers got the opportunity to go up in front of the NFL board and plead their case as to why they should be allowed to own the stadium, and Kroenke should either go look elsewhere or he can be my tenant. So this has been verified by multiple sources. It was verified enough that it was in the Wall Street Journal. You know what I mean? Like that. Apparently, Spanos hires this guy from Disney to help them put together the bid, and was talking about like, okay, this is our plan for the stadium and like Stadium City and parking, you know, all that crap that goes into that. Here's how we'll, you know, gonna get it done: sponsorships, dealing with the city council. This amount of money, this amount of time. This is why you should award it to me. So he goes in there, and this guy from Disney, this hired gun, is pitching to Jerry Jones, who's the head of the stadium committee for this, and like 3 other NFL owners. But Jerry Jones is like the chair. He's the chairperson of it. So he's the one. And there's like 3. I forget who the other people were, but it was like 3 or 4 other NFL owners that were there, and they were the ones who were going to be like making the decision, and then they were just going to tell Goodell like, this is what we decided. So the guy from the Chargers gets in there, and he's talking about like their plan for it. And I guess Jerry Jones started asking him questions about like cash flows and revenue and about like what, you know, what the long-term sustainability of this is and like what additional revenue can we pull in. And the guy said, well, we do think it's gonna end up losing some money for the first, like, I forget how many years it is, but it's like X amount of years that it's an operation. But hey, we all make enough money, right? Don't say that to Jerry Jones. It's a fun fact. Don't say that to Jerry Jones. That's a bad thing to say. So this is why the Chargers are tenants just in Stan Kroenke's building, despite the fact that they wanted to move to LA first. That tells you everything you need to know about Dean Spanos.
Yeah.
If that doesn't tell you everything you could ever need to know about Dean Spanos and why that team is the way that it is, what more evidence do I need to give you? What else could I do? Like, that was in the. I got to find that article because I was telling him, I'm like, I'm gonna frame that and like hang it in my office because it makes me laugh every time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just the part of it at the end where the way it's written, where it's like, and then he told Jerry Jones that we all make enough money, and then Jerry Jones didn't react well to that, and I'm like, really? Really?
Surprising.
Jerry Jones didn't react well to being told that he has enough money. Why would that be? I don't know. Dean. You clown. Like, yeah,
Oh
this is
man.
this is the level of decision making. This is the level of decision making that you're dealing with, and I'm like, dude, I'm a brain dead moron, and I can tell you that's a bad idea. Like, I am not smart. Okay, like for real, I have the test results to prove that I am not a genius. Okay, and even I can tell you, like, hey, homie, maybe you should not tell Jerry Jones that he has enough money. It's not a good plan for you. Like,
Not a
this
great idea.
whole thing is going to grind to a screeching halt. Okay, the minute
Mm,
you say that, hit the brakes. Like, we're done talking. And
yeah.
yeah, they like shockingly, they like Stan Kroenke's playing better. I wonder why. I don't know. Something to do with positive cash flows. Real quick, let's do wide receiver for specifically for Guillotine.
Mhm.
And then let's do tight end, and let's call it an evening here, sir. It's pleasure as always, but I know it's getting late out where you are. So I don't really have too many for Guillotine availability because it's rough out there in the streets right now.
Mhm.
Honestly, sorry if you missed your boat on CD Lamb. The one that I would mention is Keenan Allen. If
Mm.
Keenan Allen was somehow chopped by that team, he'd be my number one choice, and I'd be willing to put up like $75 on this because it's like the only part of the Chargers that I want that isn't named Austin Eckler, which will be completely unattainable for the remainder of the year, by the way, unless something tragic happens. So he'd be my number one, and then there's some other ones that are interesting to take a look at. If for some reason Adam Thielen is still out there in your Guillotine league, go check, because I've seen some weird crap where because of the buys, he was cut. Just double check it. It's 2 seconds of your life. Type Thielen into the search bar, and then move on. Like, so I'm interested in that. Uh, Last chance on T Higgins. Just PSA. I know he's had a brutal year, but he looked. Did you see that game, Lance?
Mhm.
He looked like he was back to 100%.
Oh
So
yeah.
last chance, last call on T Higgins. Otherwise, that's going to be done. I'm not interested in DK Metcalf. I know he had a good game. I know they played Washington. I will put a bid on DK if I had to, if he was out there by some miracle, but I'm tempering my expectations. And it gets kind of nasty beyond that. Like, Devontae Adams is just like, pour one out for Devontae Adams at this point. Like, I don't even know how you keep trusting it. You're probably gonna have to keep playing him, but what would you spend on Devontae Adams at this point, Lance, if he was out there? What do you think?
Just because of the head coaching change and the
Didn't
quarterback
help.
change.
Head coaching change
I
didn't help
mean,
Lance.
you know, I would probably go 50 just because it's
Okay,
Devontae Adams and I
because
know
his
what he
name's
can do.
yeah.
And I would, you know, I'd rather be right and have him on my bench and not be facing him. And,
Yeah,
he's going
if
off.
I didn't need him, it would be more attractive, honestly, to
Hmm.
hold him as a project.
Right.
Last chance on Deontay Johnson.
Mm.
Go check. Last chance, because that's and R.I.P. George Pickens. R.I.P. Shame.
Hmm.
Damn shame. Nice career you had once. That's over. Um, let's see. Chris Godwin. He's not going to have a 3 probably again for the rest of the year. Chris Godwin is one that I would put up a good amount of money on. 50 minimum. I'm
Hmm.
thinking probably closer to 75, depending on how much money I have. Possibly, if I was really desperate, might be 100. If I was in deep doo doo, and I really needed a wide receiver, and he was out there, and he was like the only one, which is conceivable, by the way, that he would be like one of the only ones out there. Yeah, I would do that because better days will be ahead. That's like the worst game Chris Godwin has had in 2 years.
Mm.
So let's not panic over that. I saw some crazy stat where Chris Godwin in his last 60 NFL games has missed his like fantasy projection like 3 times or 5 times. It's some insane stat that I could find for you that I saw on Twitter. And I went and started looking it up on Pro Football Reference, and I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Like the man has had like 4 bad games in 3 years.
Jesus.
It's insane. It's like the man, he doesn't always blow it out, but he always gets you something. Except
Yeah.
for last week. Freaking Baker. Freaking Baker Mayfield. Deebo Samuel on the mend might be available. I would be interested if I could put him on the end of my bench and see what we get. Shame that that's going to happen now. That always screws with George Kittle. Tank Dell, we already covered. Hollywood Brown gets an uptick with the return of Kyler. If he was available, be interested in that. And that's kind of going to be it for me. JSN, as you mentioned, for $1. Rashid Shaheed for $1. These are things that I would be interested in at the dollar grab bag level. If it's my team, I already roster Wan'Dale Robinson, so I'm not going to bother with going through that. But what do you think about how do you read it? What would you be looking at for guillotine wide receiver stuff that might be available?
Tyler Lockett kind of interests me. I mean, there's at least a little bit of consistency there with Geno Smith. Zay Flowers is another one who I think because of their game script, they just kind of started to go away from him, but he's been pretty consistent throughout the year. And DJ Moore is another one. I would put him right in that Chris Godwin tier where I don't think he's going to be that low again. I mean, I can see him having some, sevens, some tens, but I don't think he's going to be all the way down to the 3 again. So
yeah, Chris Godwin is kind of the one that I've is the most realistic. That's why I wanted to spend some time talking about him, and also the weird stat that I saw about like people are all mad about Chris Godwin, and I'm like, you can start looking back, and it's like, oh my God, this man is a machine. Like, why do people not talk about this?
no,
are people not aware that this man is an animal? Like, okay, like that's insane to be that consistent.
No, he's pretty solid. I mean, I would definitely probably put him first.
No, see, that's why I couldn't do it that way, because it's like he's
well,
not necessarily. I say he's the most realistic and not first for a reason, because there's a
yeah.
chance
No,
that
now
there's
that I look at it, it's like,
yeah,
I probably couldn't pass
he doesn't
on
really have
Adams.
this ceiling of like if T. Higgins was available, I would much rather spend money on T. Higgins because his ceiling is so much higher. Same thing with Thielen. Weirdly, that's a weird one, but it's true. Same thing with Allen. The ceilings on those guys are so much higher than what you'll get with a Godwin. But what Godwin presents to you is a very attractive floor. It's hardwood floors that are nicely polished. The ceiling's only about here, but the floors are lovely. Like, it's impeccably kept floor. So you know what you're getting. But with Keenan Allen, you have like church ceilings. That man could put up a 40. It's like, well, okay. Chris Godwin's not putting up a 40. Sorry.
No.
It's not happening. Let's do tight end real quick, and then we'll get out of here for the evening. Tight end is short for me. It's Cade Otton. We talked about it before. Bringing it up again. Cade Otton. Seeing a lot of targets. Also, when teams are good enough to actually take away a Mike Evans or a Chris Godwin or both at various points in the game, Cade Otton. That's what they do. That's who Baker throws it to. It's poor man's David Njoku. He's not going to put up a 20 every week.
No.
It's tight end, so you don't care. He's one of the only tight ends that could score 10 points without having to score a touchdown. He's currently available in 93% of leagues. There you go. The rest of it, Jonnu Smith would be my number 2. Number 3 would be Luke Musgrave, which I'm rapidly losing interest in, just like the Packers. And then everything else, and then honestly, a lot of this is just honestly, it's. Let me put it to you this way: it's Cade Otton, it's Jonnu, everything else is $1. It's Cade Otton, and I'd put depending on the league, $10. Probably don't need more than that. 15 if you want to be, like sure about it. Jonnu no more than 5. But I'd do more than $1. Everybody else is $1. Luke Musgrave, Hunter Henry, Donald Parham, Everett, Chikakonkwo, Juwan Johnson, Tyler Conklin. These are all dollars. Holler, holler, get that $1. It's all dollars. And I could go through some other names too. Just generally speaking, like Michael Mayer, Njoku, who I already mentioned, like a lot of crappy dollars. Daniel Bellinger, who I keep seeing people talk about. Because he had 2 good games in 2021. Yeah, like not interested. So for me, the actual tight end waiver wire stuff that you'd be interested in, Cade Otton, then Jonnu, everything else is dollar grab bag. What do you think, Lance? Anything to add to that?
The only name I'd add is one that I wouldn't bid on just yet, but it's worth monitoring. Freiermuth's been on IR for
okay.
I think this was his 4th week now, so he should
It's messed
be.
up, man. He got put on IR for 4, came back, got reactivated, didn't manage to play a game, got hurt in practice, got put back on IR.
Yeah.
So it reset the clock. I just don't remember when it reset the clock from.
I think it was week 7, so that would be.
But you got to take the bye out of there. So when was their bye?
Was there bye last?
I don't
week?
remember.
No, it wasn't, because Deontay Johnson just had a crazy good game.
I do not recall.
I'm gonna look real
I
quick.
think it's 2 weeks from Pat Fryer.
It was 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it could be coming close. Anyway, they have a pretty good schedule for tight end coming down the stretch.
Okay.
And it's not one that obviously I wouldn't recommend rostering a backup tight end. But if your tight end kind of sucks and you've been streaming, it's at least worth keeping
The only
finger on the
time
pulse.
I hold 2 tight ends is when I am streaming and I'm trying to like figure it out like week on week.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, this week I've got this guy, and the next week he plays Philly, and Philly sucks against tight ends, so we'll just pick him up now and we'll throw him on the end of the bench for $1, and then we'll just cut them both at the end of it. And then like literally that's what I'll do. I'll do weird stuff like that. Just doing like trying to save money on the waiver wire in traditional fantasy that in that way. Where
Right.
it's like, no, I'll just make this move a week in advance because it'll cost me $1 now because no one's paying attention. If I try to do it next week, it'll be $10, and it's like, I'll save my $9. So I do weird stuff like that. I do that when I'm streaming defenses too.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to do that.
It's a good strategy if you're paying attention. But people look at you weird because like, why are you holding 2 defenses? And I'm like, that's a temporary thing, my friend. Like that is not a long-term deal. That is I'm playing 4D chess here, trying to set my lineup 2 weeks in advance. Like that's literally what I'm doing. Like, and then I'll just cut it all, and then we'll go reload. As far as guillotine goes for tight end, obviously, if Travis Kelce was on the team that got chopped, this is going to be the most expensive thing in the universe, but it's going to be expensive for a reason.
I'd go 125, honestly.
I would pay more than that. So you're already not going to win. I'm telling you, in a guillotine league where you get $1,000, which is normal, if you've been following my advice and not spending more than 75 on any given week, and if you've been trying to spend even less when you can, I'm going to put you down at least 200. 200.
Yeah.
This is one of those situations where what you're waiting for as you save your money to the end is for the good teams to start getting eliminated. So the good players start hitting the pool. There is no better player. This is it. This is the gold standard of tight end. So why would I wait for him to ever go anywhere else at any point? Now is my time. So I would bid 200. Might bid 250, depending on how much money I have. I'm winning that auction, man. This is my number one guillotine thing of the week is if Kelce somehow got chopped, this is where you need to man your wallet and you need to just start taking $100 bills and putting them on the table. Because the whole point of saving your money is waiting for the blue chip players to come up. There is no higher blue chip player at this position than Travis Kelce, and it is not close. You will not win that bidding to $50. You will not win it at 100. You will not win it at 125. Some jackhole in this case is going to literally start putting down like a dumb amount of money, because this is the kind of thing that could let you win your league. This is how you win. Is now suddenly I had a good team to begin with. That's how I made it this far. Now we are adding Kelce. And by the way, I no longer have to bid on tight end for the rest of the year. Save money on that. Also free up some roster spots. Gone. Like all of them gone. Don't need. Not relevant. Like if I hit the wall, I hit the wall. We go all in on this strategy, my friend. That's literally how I live my life with this. We are pushing all the chips into the middle of the table. That's how it's going to go. Make or break. What am I sandbagging for? There are times when you want to sandbag, as I've talked about all throughout the year, where I'm like, nah, I don't really want to spend that kind of money. And I'm just going to be cheap and just keep my money in my wallet. No, I'm not going to spend more than like $75. And if I could spend less, I would. No. This is why. Because when you finally see that opportunity where it's like, nope, we are not losing this auction. I will put a large number on the paper. Like, if you felt like you needed, your league to an extent usually. If you felt like you needed to bid 3, bid 3. There is no number you could tell me that I would be like, oh, geez, I think you overpaid. Maybe you could tell me that like you bid your entire fab budget of like $700. Okay, then I might be like, all right, dude, I don't know if you really need to do that. Okay, like, but like seriously, this is where I'm like, no, this is where there are areas where I want to save money, and there are areas where I want to spend money. This is where I want to spend money. So that's my one take for this whole thing. Because honest to God, Sam Laporte is probably not available. Mark Andrews probably not available. Hawkinson probably not available. Kincaid probably not available. Kittle, no. Schultz, last chance. Maybe. Also, temper your expectations, please. He's not going to score 30 points again. Evan Ingram, probably not available. Jake Ferguson, probably not available. Trey McBride. I told those people that wasn't going to work. Taysom Hill, interesting. Sort of. Somewhat interesting. But with like really fluky. Don't want to spend a lot of money on it. Might be interested in rostering Taysom Hill. Definitely not spending real money on it. And then it's things like Cole Kmet, Kyle Pitts, Logan Thomas. Like it just goes off a cliff so freaking fast. Like it goes off one cliff immediately after you get off Kelce. There's a cliff. It's sort of like the classic episode of The Simpsons where they try to jump Springfield Gorge. And like he falls and then he like lands and then falls and then like falls again. That's literally like what this looks like on when you look at the graph of it. It's like, okay, here's Kelce, so that's the first fall off the gorge. And then here's the second fall off the gorge. The minute you get past like the next like 6 guys, it just immediately tumbles again off into a pit. And it's like, okay, this that's why I make the argument very straight faced, like tight end doesn't matter.
No.
Tight end is stupid. It's stupid. Yeah. And then Goddard's now done. Goddard is basically done for the fantasy season.
For the fantasy season, yeah.
He's going to be done for the fantasy regular season because it's already week 10, which means by the time you might be able to get him back for the playoffs. Maybe. Probably.
Risking a lot trying to bet on that too. So.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. And like in Guillotine, I don't want it.
No.
In Guillotine, I'm not really interested. Maybe if I had a roster spot and I could get him for $1, sure. Okay. Like in that unique scenario, sure. Okay. I'll live with that.
Right.
But I'm talking about even regular fantasy. You just lost Goddard for basically the remainder of the regular season. So that's one less name in the pool. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is there anybody that either as a waiver claim, like for streaming, or as a as an option you want to touch on? Because I know the Travis Kelce one, I'm sure, was the big one for both of us. So I can't imagine there.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much for guillotine, that's pretty much it for Travis Kelce. Aside from that, Logan Thomas is a little bit higher.
I do like me some Logan Thomas. He's here for a good time, not a long time. So
Yeah.
enjoy it while you got it.
Yeah. No, I mean,
TikTok, man, that's ticking time bomb. We all know it. Like, feel bad saying this, but
yeah,
he's not what I would call injury prone because that's not really a real thing. I would call him insanely unlucky.
yeah,
I would call him one of the most unlucky human beings I've ever watched play pro sports. Where it's like, God, just every time with you, like, it's not like it's not. I want to be clear. Like, it's not his fault. He has bones.
yeah,
He has bones. We all have bones. His issue is like it's just really bad luck.
yeah. I mean,
Bad luck having to play for the Commanders.
oh yeah,
It's bad luck having to play the position that he has to play, where you get shot in the ribs a bunch of times and in the head. Like, it's not. These are things that happen to everyone who plays the game. It's just he tends to have the worst outcome always, and it just doesn't necessarily make him injury prone. It just makes him incredibly unlucky. Whereas
yeah,
other guys, they get hit like that, and they're like, "Oh, you managed to avoid 3 cracked ribs." Logan Thomas doesn't have that level of luck. If he gets hit like that, those ribs are cracked, and it's just
yeah,
like, oh god.
yeah. Logan Thomas, Schultz. A lot of these guys are already above 50%. The guys who you touched on, Kate Otten, Johnny Smith, not attractive, but if you're streaming, you're streaming.
Cade Otton is slowly working his way into not mattering just at a higher level, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like, he's slowly starting to like get out of like streamer and into like, okay, could actually theoretically be somebody someday.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I'd
Maybe.
agree with that. I mean, he's definitely doing a lot more this year than he has in years past, so it's definitely going in the right direction for him. But it's getting late in the fantasy year. You kind of like to see this stuff earlier in the year to give you confidence that when it matters most, you're gonna have them. But
Like I said,
if you don't have the luxury of a choice, then you
like I
gotta do
said,
what you
Lance,
gotta do.
he's working his way up from not mattering to not mattering, just a little less.
Yeah.
That's basically the incremental.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's not great. And then for guillotine, I think we agree. Like, honest to God,
Kelce, no one else matters.
it's Kelce, and then the rest of it is like just bid whatever you want.
Yeah.
Not a lot would be my advice. Probably not more than $30 for anyone who would be available. Unless you play in a really weird, jacked up league where somebody halfway decent got. Like Andrews, I'd pay a little bit more. Hawkinson, I'd pay a little bit more. Kincaid, I would pay a little bit more. Kittle, I wouldn't. And that's actually not George Kittle's fault. George Kittle hasn't forgotten how to play football. It's just that when McCaffrey, Ayuk, we've seen this a lot now, enough to have a sample. When Ayuk, Samuel, and McCaffrey are all healthy, Kittle is the one who suffers from an offensive perspective. And it's because they use him to block.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, when you look at how good statistically he is at blocking, I understand why. He's really good at it. Like, George Kittle's just really good at football generally, both blocking and route running. It's just they don't need him as much as a true offensive possession like guy thing. And he's much more valuable to them as a blocker.
No,
and that sucks, but it's just like, if I'm Shanahan and I'm trying to win a Super Bowl and I don't give a damn about your fantasy score, I get it. Like, I would make the same choice if I was in his shoes. I'd be like, no, you're blocking, man.
Oh,
And he genuinely doesn't seem to mind. So it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to fight me on this, then I'm 100% going to do it. Kittle, I wouldn't want to pay up on. If Samuel was like ruled out for the season, that would get more attractive. Schultz, I'm going to let someone else pay for that. Because he's
I wouldn't pay up for him.
He's had a couple good games. Somebody's going to pay for that. And I just don't buy it. with Nico Collins and now Tank Dell coming back, and then probably Robert Woods coming back at some point, I just don't buy Schultz long term. I'm willing to be wrong about it. And
Yeah.
if I am wrong, I'll apologize. I won't mean it, so it's kind of hollow, but I will apologize. Evan Ingram is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to believe he'd be available in a guillotine. Ferguson, the ship has sailed. McBride, I don't want.
No.
Hill, I would be interested in, but it would depend at what. If I'll tell you what, I'll put a low ball bid in, and if I win, great.
Mm-hmm.
Cole Kmet, a little more interested, but not ideal. He's the textbook like tight end, like must score a touchdown to matter.
Robert Tonyan.
Yeah, right. And then it's Kyle Pitts, Logan Thomas. We already kind of touched on it, so it's not ideal. So with that, Lance, let's kind of wrap up here. We already kind of did the PSAs at the start of the show, but just as a reminder, you got like 2 weeks left on your trade deadline stuff. Get them in. Join our Discord. Links in the show notes. You can ask your trade questions there. We will answer them. Roster resolutions. We've cleared the backlog. Everybody's got their videos by now. If you want us to do a breakdown of your league before playoff time, $5. Codes can be bought at our website. We'll ask you some basic questions, just as Steve will. He'll coordinate that, and then we'll get a video out to you that's custom to you. And that's kind of all I got, man. So Lance, what are the things you're looking forward to here, whether it's week 10 or beyond? What are the things that you might have an eye on or keeping tabs on? Like what final thoughts for the audience? What should they be looking out for?
I think this part of the year is interesting because you really start to see rookies carve out their roles, and you've seen that earlier from, Jordan Addison, obviously Kincaid over these past couple weeks carving out, their own roles. But like you see with Charbonnet, Musgrave, you can kind of argue is coming along. JSN is coming along a little bit, and it's kind of put up or shut up time for Quentin Johnston. And that's not to say that it's going to be all over, but it's like, okay, you're a first round pick. You are in a system with arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league. You're now pretty much the number 2. Let's see something.
Done nothing. Nothing with it. Like
no.
And they've simplified his route tree for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't want to hear about that from my first round draft pick.
Yeah.
This is like when people drafted Kadarius. This is what I say people, the Giants. This is when like the Giants drafted Kadarius Toney in the first round, and I was just cackling. We were live streaming that for the website. I nearly peed my pants. Like I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, you could have got that guy for real. You could have drafted him in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to run any routes. And this is why I hear them talking about Quentin Johnston now, and they're like, oh, well, at TCU, he only played on the right side of the field, and he only knows like 3 routes. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, that's
like
not.
Look at Jordan Addison, who already knows how to run routes like a pro before he even came into the league. Look at Josh Downs, who like he only knows how to run like 3 or 4 routes. He only needs to run 3 or 4 routes. It doesn't matter for his position. Right. And even then, he runs them incredibly well. He's so smooth in and out of his breaks. Like like you see how they make that transition into the league. And then you have other guys that are like freak athletes that it's like route running. I don't need no route running. Early career Odell Beckham Jr. There wasn't no route. Calvin Johnson. There ain't no route. You just run that way. I'll throw it. That's what I'm talking about. Is like there's certain guys who can get away with that. But they are so few and far between in this league where you can be one of these like kind of prima donna, like I am so good, I don't need to run routes. I am such an elite level athlete. Look at me go. DK Metcalf is another one that was like, what route? There ain't no route. He just goes and does it. Like he runs that way with his arm up and you throw it to him. And it doesn't matter if you double covered. It makes no difference. Like you have to foul him. And that's kind of what it is. Those guys are so few and far between. They don't come into the league very often. that can do it. And it's like, those guys also, they only last for like 4 or 5 years. Whereas, like, look at the guys who like really learn how to run routes. This is why Jerry Rice was out there until he was damn near 40.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he was both. He was the rare, the unicorn that was both. An unbelievable athlete that no one could cover, who also learned how to run routes. But eventually the athleticism fades. But he learned how to run routes at such a level that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because he was just open. And that's what I'm looking, and that's a good point, Lance, where you're talking about like Quentin Johnson, where it's like you got to figure out how to do something. But I'm like, do what? Like he's not proving to me that he's an elite level enough athlete to like just go out and dominate one coverage. Like, I'm sorry, not one coverage. I mean, single coverage. It's the two corner, but he's singled up because they're doubling Allen or Eckler, because you would.
Well, that's kind of the thing. It's like you have attention on Eckler, you have attention on Allen. You know,
you're getting single one-on-one man coverage on the outside. Can't win it. I'm like, you got to be able to win that.
Yeah.
You got to. Mike Williams can win it. And I don't think Mike Williams is all that good, if I'm being perfectly honest. Not to like drag this out, but like I don't think Mike Williams is actually that good. Never have. But he can win it when it's one-on-one. He might dislocate his knee. Oh, that was under the belt. That was below the belt. but yeah, like that's the issue, is like he can do that. I'm watching Quentin Johnson and I'm like, dude, you're just not open. Like,
no.
And then he's not running the right route. Like there's times where it's supposed to be a comeback route or a double move and he just does it wrong. I'm like, dude, it can't be that hard.
No.
I know they run a relatively complicated offense, but it cannot be this hard. That we're 10 weeks into the season, and I would make excuses like, oh, he didn't have any training camp. No, he did. He was a draft pick. He had all of training camp and OTAs and rookie mini camp. And for it to be 10 weeks in, it's like, dude, if the light bulb was going to go on, it should have gone on by now.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but that's why I brought up Jordan Addison, where it's like, you started seeing it with Jordan Addison by like week 4. Where it's like, no, he's already starting to like battle his way into that number 2 job that people thought he was going to get. And by like, I know with Jefferson, that got accelerated a little bit, but by like week 6, he was already pretty much there. And it's like, they're not going to go back to KJ Osborne as the number 2. That's done. We're already done with that. And then JSN is a good one to your point too, where it's like, no, you're starting to see the shift. It's just different. It manifests differently there because they have 2 established guys. But really what he's done is he's murdered Noah Fant.
Yeah. Noah Fant's murdered Noah Fant.
Yeah. Noah Fant, I was going to say Noah Fant does a perfectly good job of murdering Noah Fant. He has kind of like carved out that slot role. He's it's weird. He's a little behind Josh Downs. And Josh Downs is working out to be one of my best takes of the year so far. I've had some really, really good takes, and I've had a couple really shitty takes. I'm not gonna lie. But Josh Downs, being really high on Josh Downs, especially in Dynasty, is looking great. I have a lot of Josh Downs shares right now, and people are like, "Why would you want Josh Downs in the second round?" And I'm like, "You'll don't worry, you'll see about why I want that. Like, there's a reason." And people are like, "Oh, I want Quentin Johnson," and I'm like,
"Have fun."
Don't like the idea that he's that old, and they're like, he can't run routes. Give me JSN and Addison and Josh Downs, who already know how to do that, and they just have to learn how to play pro football. That's much more. That's why I get nervous. I get especially nervous when you're talking about guys. They don't do this as much in college anymore, but they still do at some level. The guy only played on one side of the field. I'm like, they don't let you do that in the NFL.
Yeah, no.
You can't do that, man. Dude, it's not 1998.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne ain't playing no more. That ain't how that works. Like, they don't do that way. Like, they rotate a lot. Most teams do. There's maybe 1 or 2 old school teams that don't rotate. But that's so few and far between. That's such an antiquated way of running, of thinking. Anyway. Well, Lance, it's been a pleasure as always. Find us all on our Discord. Sign up for that. And until next week, keep up the nonsense. Oh, and do not watch the Thursday night football game. Oh, for the love of God. Go to the movies with your family. Read a book. Take a bike ride. Go to the grocery store.
Go
Go to the
outside and touch the
gym.
grass.
Go to the gym. Touch grass. Like, put a cardboard box over your head and pretend you're an astronaut. I don't know what you want to do, but watching that game on Thursday is not a good idea for your eyes and for your sanity and just for your soul and for your mental health. Read a book. Go to dinner with a loved one. Take your kid to the museum. Help your kid with their homework. I don't care what you do. Like, pick up an extra shift at work. Whatever you got to do, man. Don't watch that game on Thursday night. And with that, keep up the nonsense. And we'll see you. We will see you on Thursday. Watch us on Thursday. Roster the people. Me and Jason. 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. Can't be worse. And with that, we will see you on Thursday. Keep up the nonsense and have a week.
Take care.
Take care.